Right, hi guys, and welcome back to another video on Bluebeam Revu. So in the previous video, we covered the first method on how to measure curves, which is the space that you see here, where we did convert to arc. Right, so for today's video, we're going to be covering the second option, which is called dynamic fill. Right, so dynamic fill, first of all, I will start off with a very simple explanation. Alright, so I'm going to go to Tools, Measure, and under Dynamic Fill, or the shortcut key J. Right, so dynamic fill is formed of two parts. First of all is your boundary, which is here, and your fill. So your boundary basically controls where you want the color to be in a blank space, for example. So when I start to hold on to my mouse and move around, it will just spread out like that, right? So now there are certain settings which you may need to use, right? Where, for example, boundary size. So boundary size basically means the size of your boundary. Do you want it to be thick or do you want it to be thin? And your fill size. So your fill size refers to your paintbrush. So do you want your paintbrush to be thick or do you want it to be thin? So fill speed as well. How fast does it clear? Right. As for edge sensitivity, right. So let's show you a simple example. So if I actually start my boundary size right now and I set to low, right? So if I set to low, this means that when the paintbrush or your paint hits a line, it generally ignores and just covers all, right? So for example, let me show you. Once I click low, it just spreads out throughout like that, right? So but however, if I actually turn it off and I set to high and I start coloring, then it will fill up according to the lines for that. Right. The other thing I want to cover is boundary. So if I actually color off this room, in which has to include the door, and if I color off a certain shape, more than likely you will overshoot. Right. So that's where I have to draw the boundary. But if you see now, the boundary is a bit too thick. If I double click, it will actually measure only the internal space. So in situations like this, I should Control Z, undo, and actually reduce my boundary size such that when I draw the line, I retain more space over here, right? So when I have more space over here, then I can decide to actually select what I want to measure. Alright, so that is an overview of how the feature works. Okay, so now let's move on to actually applying it on an actual curve shape. Right, so with my curve shape here, I will just color off the entire space here. Right, so once you are done, right, the dynamic fill feature is unique in the sense that instead of selecting an item from your tool chest and telling the software what you want to measure it as, this dynamic fill feature does the exact opposite. You first fill the area, then you tell the software what you want it to be. Right, so for example, I can just click the drop down menu under area and it will show you all the tools that you have saved in your tool chest. So I could just select any one of them and click apply, and the area will be measured like that. Right, so the difference between the first video and second video is that this will likely appeal more for those who are measuring very odd shapes, for example like landscaping, external spaces where there are really many different curves. Right, then it's better and recommended to use this dynamic fill. Right, so I hope this video has helped you out. Right, thank you, see you again.